Hi, my name is Logan Walker with the Walk of Life podcast, where I interview people, break down their lives, and get to know what they know. Chelsi Williams, also known as Chelsi Freeze, is an educator, mother, and ex-college athlete. Welcome, Chelsi. The first question that I ask everybody who comes on the show is, what do you want your legacy to be? So when someone says, "Oh, after you pass, do you remember Chelsi Freeze?" What do you want them to say?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question because I listen to Melanie's, and it's a tough one. Uh, I think similar to Melanie, the first thing that pops into my mind is that I really want to be known as somebody who was dedicated to my family. I think what really sticks with me is she was such a good mom. If somebody said that about me, I think that would be the biggest compliment ever. But I also thought a little deeper into that and was thinking that to be a good mom, that means that I am showing my kids love and teaching them to love other people. And I created humans that should be good humans in the world. And so, really, they're my legacy. If I can teach them to love and be kind and accepting of others, and they can put that out into the world, and maybe they have kids or within their job they put that out into the world, I think that's the best thing that I could do as a human. But on the other side of that, I have to add that I would of course want people to say, oh, she was such a great teacher, she really cared about me, she really cared about her students, she really wanted us to be successful. And I also think it's important for me that my students in our small town learn that I have a love for traveling. And it's a big deal to me that they want to get out and experience the world outside of Pacific County.
I can agree with that. I feel like for me, after I moved away, I learned so many different cultures. And
Mm-hmm.
as Americans, we think it's just America.
Yeah.
Like the world is so big and diverse, and there's so many different, like the cultures even just come into personalities,
Mm-hmm.
like how people come across and things like that. One thing I wanted to touch on was, you said being a good mother.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like having kids right now is an influence on that, and that could change in the future
You mean as far as being a good mom right now?
as your legacy?
Oh, yeah. I think that that's something very specific to me right now. However, I think that for the rest of my life, my one big commitment is to being a good mom, and that's forever. It doesn't matter if my kids are 10 months old and 3 years old or 40 years old. I'm forever going to be trying to lead by example for my kids. So, really, that's it for me. There's a lot of other things happening in my life, and my what I want my legacy to be, it might change, but they're always going to be in the back of my mind and in my heart, and everything I do is with them in mind. So that won't change, I don't think.
One of the coolest things that you said in there was lead by example, which a lot of people, I feel like, nowadays are inclined to talk more than actually show.
Yeah.
And the best way to back up or even just to speak volumes is to just go out there and do it. Do whatever you love and do it with a passion, hard work, really get into it.
For sure. As my child's here making noises in the background, I would say that that's something that became a little more apparent to me as I became a teacher, because I can talk and talk all I want in my classroom, but really my students see me. They see how I treat other students. They see how I treat other teachers. They're watching me, and I knew that, and that's part of me being a teacher. But having kids was that first time in my life that I really reflected upon my own behaviors, and it's in a good way, but also a scary way. Like, my kids are always watching me, and they're little. Jack just turned 3, but he's always watching. I could be, arguing with my husband. He's watching. I can be having anxiety. He's watching. I can stub my toe. He's watching. Like, how are you going to handle all these things that are happening to you? And I can tell him how to be. I can tell him, you can do this, you can't do this. But at the end of the day, he's going to do exactly what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like a hard pill to swallow, but it's the reality of life. And life is about how you act, not what you say. Words are nothing if it's not backed up by actions. That's how I feel.
Right, right. Um. Okay, let's get into it.
Okay.
So your childhood, what was it like? And specifically growing up with all boys around you, all your cousins and your brother.
Right. It's funny because my students are all like, you were so meant to be a boy mom, which looking at my childhood, maybe that was true. I was known as that little, tom girl running with the boys. I wanted to be a boy. I did. I just was barefoot, being crazy with all the cousins, and there's some girls mixed in there, but I think running around with the boys shaped who I am as a person a lot. Also being raised in Labam, on a ranch with 2,500 acres of exploration, was a huge piece of creating who I am today. And I would say, just looking at my childhood, like blanketing it, a blanket statement would be, I'm the most incredibly lucky human that there is. I grew up with incredibly supportive parents, wonderful siblings, cousins all around me, aunts and uncles that loved me. And we just had this space to explore. And my whole family, my parents and my extended family, grew up with the sense of working hard, getting outside, getting dirty, helping during hay season. I really grew up with a family that taught me how to work and how to have fun and to know the difference of when to do which. And I just really thank my family for teaching me good values and morals. And here I am still, we're looking out my window at the property. And I just really appreciate what I had growing up. And the older I get and the more I teach, the more I really see, man, I am a lucky human, and not everybody gets to have an upbringing like I did. And so hopefully I can give that to my kids. But I'm incredibly thankful for what I had.
Yeah, there's not very many people out in the world that has this.
No.
This family oriented ranch, and I feel like that comes down to the core.
Yeah.
That's instilled in your values, and it's apparent with your whole family. That's true, and this is we talk about showing it. You can't show it any better way than this.
Right. And I think growing up, all of us took that for granted. We didn't realize what we had here. We just had best friends all around us. I'd run across the field. There's my cousins. There's my cousins. Let's go build a fort. Let's go swimming in the creek. Let's find something to do. And that shaped me. Go find something to do. Get outside. Get out of the house. Stop whining. That's how I grew up. Like, you go outside and having an adventure. Not very many people get that. During COVID and quarantine, that really made me thankful for having what we have here, because I had a little newborn and it was really stressful. We didn't know how COVID would affect, if Jack got COVID as a baby. I was really scared, a new mom. I was scared of him catching a cold,
Mm-hmm.
And we just went up on the property and just looked at the creek, just sat and enjoyed what we have here. And I thought a lot about people stuck in apartments and in cities. And I know people love living in the city, but speaking just who I am as a person, man, that would have been really hard. Especially people that had little kids. Like, what did they do? Stuck in their apartments, stuck in these little houses in the city. I just feel so grateful that we had this during that time because I was already stressed enough as a new mom and had this little tiny breakable baby. And that's what we did during quarantine. We went and just hung out with the cows.
Yeah, I mean it's so beautiful out here. There's no place like this on earth. All the green. Ugh.
Yeah, I know. We are unbelievably lucky, and I think it also took bringing friends from college to realize this is a special place because people would be like, "Holy cow, I can't believe your family all lives here. That's weird."
Right.
You guys like family from the 1900s. It's not something you see anymore. And the cool thing is we're kind of bringing in the next generation. I've got cousins with kids, and we see them a lot. And those kids are hopefully going to grow up in a similar lifestyle that we had.
Yeah, touching on the hard work, that there's something about that, especially doing things with your hands out in
Mm-hmm.
nature, and it just instills hard work into whatever you do. In a school,
Mm-hmm.
into your job, no matter, you could be working at a desk, and that hard work from throwing hay bales in the summers in the 100-degree heat as you're sweating and talking to people, creating social skills.
Yeah.
That's like, it correlates to everything.
Yeah, it's true. We definitely were required to work hard and help the family out. That was just an understanding, whether it's chores in the house or helping on the farm. I throwing hay bales even. I was that weird kid that, like I said, I think I wanted to be a boy, where I was like, I'm not going to drive truck. I'm going to throw hay bales. And I was like this little scrawny, like 80-pound, like sixth grader, maybe 80 pounds, But I threw hay bales and they let me. And I think my dad saw that I wanted to, and that's how I was choosing to pitch in. And as long as I was working hard, he was happy. But eventually it didn't make sense for me to be throwing hay bales anymore. My cousins actually picked up the slack for me because they'd be stacking. I'll never forget Andrew would I'd be trying to push it up on the top section and he'd grab it from me and be like, I got you. But it didn't matter because we were all working hard. We were all sweating. We were all helping the family. And that was teaching us those life lessons. It does correlate. I see it every day. Kids that are required to help out at home, or kids that sit around playing video games all day, or nobody's there to tell them to get outside, or they don't have a safe spot to go play outside. Maybe, not everybody does, but they're the kids that don't have that work ethic in the classroom or playing sports. It was so weird being a coach. I'm sure having helped with sports.
Mm-hmm.
There's just kids that know how to hustle, and there's just kids that don't. And that was a hard thing for me, is that I felt like I couldn't teach hustle, but it came from somewhere. Some kids maybe are born with it, like you've got that competitive drive, but some kids need to learn it from somewhere. It goes back to watching your parents or whoever
Mm-hmm.
raised you. They work hard. You learn to work hard. You teach your kids to work hard. It's kind of the circle of life,
Yeah.
I guess.
And one thing I noticed is when you do work hard, and for me, especially with others, that like people that I enjoy, I've come to really just love it. Like I crave it. Like when I was in Missouri, I had there's no choice for me to do. There was no work to go outside, and
Right.
we went over. I met this lady, and we were hanging out by her little pool of or whatever. And they were kind of like digging in the yard. And I was like, "Do you want me to start weeding for you?"
Yeah.
It's like, I need something to do, productive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started weeding her yard and planting flowers for her.
That's awesome.
And then when I got back, Dad's like, "Okay, we got to build a few hundred feet of fence." I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, let's do it." I've just had so much fun doing
Yeah.
it.
because you were raised doing that.
Yeah.
You know.
But looking back, like, I didn't want to do it when I was 14 or 15.
Right.
And more I reflected on, I'm like, wow, now I I enjoy this. It's
Isn't
just
that funny?
crazy how in such a short amount of time you can mature so
Right.
much.
Yeah.
Which is something you got to keep in mind being a mother, you know?
Yeah.
Things are going to change so quickly.
Yeah, my kids probably aren't going to want to do things that I ask them to do, but it's I feel the same way with teaching. Teaching and parenting to me kind of go hand in hand. I know my students hate me some days. They don't want to do the work. The number one thing I hear about my teaching is, why do you always make us do so much work? But someday, I know that most of those kids are going to look back on it and say, wow, she made us do a lot of work. She believed that we could do this level of work, and she didn't give up on us when he complained, you know. And with my kids, it's the same thing. Someday I know that they'll look back and thank me and thank their dad because we made them work hard. And then it becomes natural, it becomes a habit. You crave it. Like you
Yeah.
said, you want to, you get bored. You can't just sit in the house all day. You got to get out and do something. And I think that it's always the conversation of nature versus nurture. You know, is a kid born wanting to go outside and play? Is a kid born being outgoing? Or is that taught by their parents? And it's always a combination. But things like hard work, I really believe that comes from the example being set at home.
And a lot of times it's your environment around you, you know, where you're at in the world.
Right. That's true too.
So there's a lot of factors that
Yes.
obviously we're not covering, but we are covering some major ones. You know, I think the biggest influences in your life are your parents and obviously your peers.
Right.
Is huge.
Well, and I've also, like, coming from such a privileged childhood, because that's what I am. I'm a privileged person. I've had to learn about kids who didn't come from privileged lifestyles, and I've had to adapt how I talk to them, how I treat them, how I help them, because I don't have any experiences to really pull from. Like, I don't have any major hardships. So that was difficult when I started teaching kids who have major hardships. Like, there's a laundry list of things that could be going on with a kid. But I chose to go from elementary teaching to junior high school, because I felt like I was trying to instill these morals and beliefs and these work ethics in these little kids. And it was just a little bit too much for them, you know? Or they'd go home for the weekend or the summer and their parents are teaching something totally different. So I always felt like I was failing. Like, I'm trying to teach you so hard. I'm trying to help you, trying to teach you how to be a hard worker, a good person. And it's like out the window the moment they go home. And that bothered me. But now that I'm teaching junior high school, I can have that conversation with kids. Like, listen, doesn't matter what's going on at home. You are old enough now and you have the choice to be better than the situation that you're in. And to me, that's really powerful. It's really hard. It's not fair that kids are put into these, you know, home lives that are less fortunate than others, but they can choose to be a hard worker at school. Doesn't matter what's happening at home. You know, they can choose to hopefully come out for sports. Maybe they need rides or whatever, but they can choose to work really hard in that. They can choose to get a summer job. They can choose to set their alarm in the morning, get to school on time. All those things can be taught. So for me, that's a really fun side, or I guess fulfilling part of teaching junior high school students, is that you can be that person that motivates them even if there's nobody at home motivating them.
And that was one of my biggest influences, because I didn't want to just be a math teacher.
Right.
I wanted to be able to teach kids things that I wish I knew. So I know junior high and high school is a lot of developing and changes going on in the body and everything like that. But if I knew some of those things, I could just see myself at a different level already. Right. I mean, it sucks to look back like that, but I'm just want that for the next generation.
Right.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Okay, so growing up, we getting into school, and your dad was on the school board, right? So how did that affect you, having your dad? He was
He was
superintendent,
principal.
principal,
Yeah.
principal.
That's a really good question. So the weird thing about me when I was in junior high school is that I don't think that I noticed so much how it affected other people that my dad was my principal, which I'm thankful for now because looking back, there was a ton of judgment there from my peers. And I did get kind of bullied in junior high, but I had no idea that it had any connection to my dad being my principal. And it did. Like looking back, we can all look back and see things from junior high and high school with adult lenses that we didn't see then. And for me, I think that was a good thing because I was kind of a daddy's girl. Like I always wanted to impress my dad. I was always trying to be silly and funny for my dad. And I was like that all through junior high and high school with him there as my principal. Like I loved it. I shouldn't have, but I was a good kid, so I wasn't ever worried about getting in trouble. I just would pop into his office all the time and be like, "Hey, Dad, what are you doing? So happy you're here. You know, can you sign my preacher?" Like I was always going in there just to laugh with him and say hi, and it was just kind of like, cool. My dad's at school with me. But looking back at some of the issues I had with some of my peers, it was because he was there and there were judgments and speculations. I got a lot of, oh, the only reason you get good grades is because the teachers are too afraid to give you anything other than an A because your dad's the principal. He's their boss. Okay. I get why kids would say that. The only reason you're on varsity basketball, varsity volleyball is because the coach doesn't want to disappoint you because your dad's the principal, whatever. And so looking back, I realized everyone had these thoughts and opinions, but at the time, it just didn't really dawn on me that much.
Yeah, and it couldn't have been because you were just a freak of an athlete.
Well,
that definitely could not have
I
that.
have to share a story. The funniest one, because I did hear things. They did bother me. I just think it should have bothered me more. I don't know if it's because of how my parents raised me that it didn't bother me, or if I just didn't notice it so much, or I ignored it. I honestly couldn't tell you. But I had the first, I don't know, the second year I won pole vault at state. I don't even remember. Mr. Peterson would remember. I remember that a girl was like, the only reason she won is because her dad's the principal. And I was like, what? You think he was there like holding the bar up? Like,
yeah, he lowered it as you
yeah, like what is your actual logical thought behind that? But there were a lot of comments, like that same girl, as I was going to the state, as my friend shared with me, this is like a rumor, whatever, that she said, "Oh, I hope Chelsi does bad at state because she wins everything." Just stuff like that. I dealt with weird. I mean, looking back, you have to just say that that's probably jealousy. And I tell students that all the time. Usually, when someone's making fun of you or they have a problem with you and you don't know what you're doing wrong, they're probably jealous of something. So if you can think that rather than thinking that person just doesn't like you or trying to find what you did wrong, you'll be a lot happier. But you can't control that other people don't like you or don't like that you're successful or don't like that your dad's the principal or don't like that you grew up in a privileged situation. I couldn't change that about myself, so I just had to ignore the comments and move on.
Well, if you look back in history, like when there was kings and emperors and all this, there was always people that wanted to bring them down.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I don't know if it was a fear factor or it could have been jealousy, like you say, but there was always someone, no matter if the king came from a slave and worked his way up to be a king, if someone always wants to take the top dog down.
Mm-hmm.
For some, I don't know what it is. Like, are we hating on success? Like, we should be happy for you. And that, to me, that's motivating. if I see someone that's doing better than me, okay, I got to do more than what they're doing
Right.
just to catch up.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. If everyone was like you, then we would have a bunch of ultra competitive people and a bunch of really successful people, and that would be awesome. But not everybody's like that. Not everybody wants to put in the work. And so maybe it is easier to hate on someone or pick them apart or find something wrong with them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also just part of being a teenager. I see it all the time. You can have everything or you can have nothing, and kids are going to find something to pick on you for. Everyone gets picked on at some point in their life, and the best thing, it's the oldest trick in the book, but ignoring it is the best thing you can do, because when people want to tear you down, they're looking for a reaction. I tell my students that all the time. It's such a hard thing when people are, being negative or saying bad things about you behind your back or to your face, to just ignore it and move on. But for some reason, those people feel the need to, tear other people down. And it does tend to be those who are having success. It could be success in academics, in sports, or that you are successfully dating some guy that some other girl wants to date. It really doesn't matter. Eventually, someone's going to have it out for you. And that's all part of life. I think one of the best things that happened to me in junior high is that I was kind of bullied and had to deal with that and move on, and it happens. I see it. I teach junior high school. Kids can be mean, but at the end of the day, I always end up feeling bad for the boy, because I can just see that they're the ones that are lacking the support or the love or the skills that other people have. It always comes down to something that kid is missing out on.
And it could be to the point of their dad or mom is beating them. Right. So they feel that power, and so they go and beat someone else. Either that's physically or mentally, right. It's any sort of abuse out there.
I just took a training this summer called Behavior as Language. And the idea is that every behavior that a kid has is telling something about that kid. And there was actually a section about kids who bully. A lot of times they're trying to demonstrate power that they don't have at home. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate if you're the kid on the other side of that bullying, but as a teacher, you have to see that and you have to help both kids. The kid being bullied, yes, but the bully, they're acting this way because of something happening to them. A kid doesn't just come out of the womb as a bully.
Right, absolutely. That comes back to the environment thing, mm-hmm. Where you grew up, and you can't choose those things, mm-mm. Well, one thing you can choose is how they affect you.
Right.
Once you get older enough,
right.
You it's a conscious decision at junior high school level to bully or not to bully. Mm-hmm. You can either learn from what your parents are doing or take up the same actions. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we just have to talk to kids about that or how to influence that.
It's a tough one. Bullying today, especially with social media, is hard to combat. And then the parents get involved. And I understand that they're concerned and worried, but sometimes parents are bullying too. I hate to say it, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in a lot of instances. And we'll have a kid that's bullying and their parents are bullying the other parents. And it's like, goes back to setting that example, mm-hmm. But we can't control parents. All we can do is try to help our students. And what I've found, you're going to be a teacher, you'll figure it out on your own, but the best thing, the most successful thing that I've found is just forming relationships with all the students, but particularly with those who are bullying or getting in trouble with teachers or whatever that might be. Those are the kids that need a positive role model in their life. It's incredible the difference you'll see in a kid who gets called out in class in front of his peers. They get argumentative, or they might storm out of the room, or a number of things. You call that kid after class, after all their classmates are gone. 9 times out of 10, they're a totally different kid. Especially if you pose a question like, is everything okay? Seems like you're having a really hard day. Is everything all right at home? And you just see that wall come down, like that surprise sometimes, because kids like that are often used to being yelled at. They're used to being accused of things. They're used to being in trouble, and they're looking for that. They want to have the same reaction that they're used to. It's consistency. They're yelled at home for this behavior. They have that behavior in their classroom. They're looking to see if you're going to handle it the same way their parents do. So when you show care instead of just coming down on them hard, it's amazing that you see a different kid.
Right.
Almost every time. It's almost sad because you know that kid is just seeing negativity all the time. But if you can be that consistent person where they know, okay, when all the other students leave the classroom, you're going to be nice to me. You're going to check on me. You're going to see how I'm doing. You're going to let me tell you my side of the story. Yeah, maybe you'll get detention. Maybe you'll get in trouble. Maybe not. But we're just going to sit here and talk because you respect me enough to do that. And a lot of those kids aren't respected in other areas of their life.
I think discipline is one of the things that is kind of fading away almost. If either, set by teachers, parents, themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I'm personally working on right now is self-discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy when your alarm goes off at 9 o'clock in the morning to just get up and do whatever you want. But when that alarm goes off at 4 o'clock in the morning, that snooze button is just staring at you. You're like, oh, I could really use that extra 9 minutes.
Oh, yeah. I'm a frequent snoozer. Well, pre-kids. They're my alarm.
That's a whole different situation.
But you're right. Self-discipline. It's hard to come by young people who are self-disciplined this day and age. I feel like times have changed a bit. So it's a breath of fresh air to see people your age waking up that early in the morning and committing yourself to a variety of things to better yourself. It's hard to teach that.
Yeah.
But you've got it.
I definitely learned it though. I wasn't taught by a person necessarily. I might have been just because my dad would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning since I grew up. But once I took up reading, like self-development books, all of this stuff, it was like snap. Like it clicked for me.
Wow.
I was like, I have to work on this. And I'm gonna tell you a quick story. So we're driving to college to Missouri, and we stopped in Colorado Springs at my dad's half brother's. And he's a very successful guy, runs his own company and things like that. And he's like, I want you to read this book. I was like, I haven't read a book in
since my high school teacher made me.
Yeah. I was like, okay, whatever. And so I opened it up. I started to flip through the pages and got better. And I finished it by the time I got to college.
Wow.
And it changed my whole perspective on life, how to approach things. And after that, I was like, I got to start reading. Like,
what book was this? You have to tell us.
The Slight Edge.
Okay.
By Jeff Olson.
All right.
The most influential book I've ever read in my entire life. I wouldn't say the best, but it changed my life.
Jump-started a series of changes in your life.
Absolutely. And it's been a snowball effect. I'm working on my 9th book since then.
Wow. That's amazing.
And it's one of the big things is pick up a personal development every day. Just read 10 pages. If you look at it like this, there's 365 days in a year. Okay, so you read 10 pages a day. How many? 36,000 or 3,650?
Yeah.
You know how many books?
Yeah, that is
That's
a lot.
30, 40 books a year.
Yeah. Reading is powerful.
And you can put that into anything, you know. Say I want to jump higher. So I do jumping exercises 30 minutes a day.
Right.
You tally it up for a year. How much time did you put in? You know, and you're going to get better and you're going to see that and it's going to multiply. And that's like one of my whole mind shifts. And then I just learned more and more from that, how to become more disciplined, things, actions to take. Got sticky notes everywhere.
Hey, so do I. But mine are more like, don't forget this, don't forget this. Yeah. And not necessarily making myself a better person.
I just put one on my ceilings that says, wake up.
Nice. I like that.
So when I first thing open my eyes, that's what I'm looking at.
I'm going to start putting sticky notes on the kids. Change your diaper. Remind me to feed you. You know, it's funny that you bring up that book because I feel like you're sort of talking about habit forming. And my dad and I have talked pretty extensively about what it takes to drop bad habits and what it takes to form good habits. And in theory, it's easy, but really it takes commitment.
Absolutely.
I know there's numbers out there about how many times you have to do something before it becomes a habit, but it's a conscious effort. And I think that's what people are missing. It's not just if you brush your teeth every morning for 60 days, then you do it automatically. You have to actually commit to making yourself do new habits or to dropping habits and make it an important thing in your life.
And be disciplined with it.
Yes.
You know,
it's not, it sounds easy, but it's really not until you become someone like yourself where you have become a disciplined person.
Which we're still working on.
It should always be a work in progress, though. We're imperfect people.
Yeah. And we always will be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you're not going to be perfect no matter what you do.
Right. So. I struggle with that as a mom. I want to be perfect. And anytime I have a setback of any sort, I just come down on myself so hard. But that's been an important part of having kids for me, is realizing I can't be perfect. You can't be perfect. My kids can't be perfect. And you have to just move on. And every day, try to be a good person, try to be a better person. And you should be working on that till the day you die. I do feel like there's a lot of adults that kind of plateau, even in their thinking, like politics or anything like that. People stop trying to take in new information, it seems like, and it's never ending. There's always new information to be learned. Mm-hmm. You can always read more books. You can always be in better shape. You know, there's always new things to learn. But you have to commit yourself to it.
And college really shaped me. And one of my influences into creating podcasts was I just want to be able to learn. You know, mm-hmm. I want to learn from other people. And I used to be a pretty closed mind when I was young, 18, 17 years old. I was pretty closed off, what I thought was the law. Mm-hmm. And then I got here and I was like, what do they think? Why did they think that? It's not always about what they think, it's why.
Right.
Where did that come from? You don't know mm-hmm. until you ask, until you have a good conversation with them.
Right. I totally agree with that. It's interesting to me. I'm not a political person, but it's interesting to me when people are set in their opinions. Like forever? You're never gonna potentially learn a new piece of information that could shift how you feel about something. How is that possible? I could have had a whatever political opinion a year ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, and feel very differently today. And I might feel very differently in 15 more years because things happen to me. I talk to people, I have kids. I feel way differently about things now that I have kids because I'm looking at things from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. I'm a mom now. And I just will never understand how people can be so closed-minded that they don't even want to hear why you think what you think. Just like what you're saying. You don't have to agree with someone, but learn from people.
And when you're closed off, like you said, plateau, when you're closed off, you're just gonna ride that same. Let's climb the mountain,
Right.
Let's get a little bit better.
Other people are, so you're getting left in the dust.
Yeah.
You can plateau and never take in any new information or ideas or opinions, and you're never going to be a better person. We can be better people until we die.
Mm-hmm. I
Right?
agree.
You can always be better. You can always learn more things. That's a hard thing for me to accept because I've always been a perfectionist, but I can't be perfect.
So I took a child and adolescent psychology class in college, and specifically in parenting, they said it's not about making mistakes, but it's about what you do most of the time. Because obviously, sometimes you're gonna have faults, and you're not gonna back up what you say. But if you back up what you say 8 out of 10 times, that's what they're gonna pick up.
Right. And something I've actually learned from my counselor is that those other 2 out of 10 times or whatever that you do happen to make a mistake, those are also learning moments for your child. What do you do after you've made a mistake? Because they're still watching you. Are you going to have a conversation with your child and apologize for yelling? What are you going to say? How do you react? Because you could just snowball and get more angry and more upset because you made a mistake, or you can stop and think, what was the mistake? And how can I approach my child to teach them a lesson? Because kids have emotions. They get mad, they get sad, they yell, they do all kinds of things. And they have to learn how to control or manage those emotions, not control, I guess. So for me, it's about what you do most of the time. But just as important, what do you do during the times that you mess up?
Right. I never thought about it that way. That's a lesson learned for me right here.
I have to think about it that way because I screw up all the time. And if I didn't think of it like that, I would be living in a hole and crying because I just want to be the best that I can be for my kids all the time. And that's a heavy weight. You know, it's hard for me to realize that, Jack already is remembering things. He just turned 3. He's smart as a whip. He will remember some things that he sees me doing now, that he hears me saying. He's watching my behavior and learning how to be a person. So I have to be the best that I can be, even when I make mistakes. And that's hard, but you just move on. You have to.
And it's a conscious decision.
It's a conscious decision to say, okay, I just screwed up. I just, whatever, yelled in front of my child, who I don't want to yell, and he yells all the time. So now I'm going to talk to him about why I yelled, what I was feeling, tell him what I should have done differently, and explain that everybody gets mad sometimes.
And you're also teaching them to be open.
Yes. And that's also, I think, something's a little bit a new age type thing. Like you brought up, discipline is different, is looking different. And I agree with that. There's a big push on something called gentle parenting. And it's moving away from spanking, even like timeouts is looked at as bad. But the idea is that your kids are watching you basically and learning how to regulate their emotions because they're seeing you do it and not responding to negative behaviors, but it's all just a big mess.
I do have some questions about that later.
Okay,
so
we should move on.
We'll get into that. Okay, so senior year of high school's over, just done with graduation. How was the transition from small town high school to college?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the reasons I chose to go to Eastern Washington University is because, one, I got a scholarship for track, but two...
Because your dad was a principal, right?
Yes, that is why. Well, he does have connections at Eastern, so that's actually more believable than what people said about me in high school. But no, I think it was more about how high I was pole vaulting, if we're being literal. But I also wanted to stay in Washington State. I was kind of a homebody, but I had this feeling that I wanted to get away. I was scared about it, but I wanted to be far enough away that I couldn't just pack up and come home and drive back in the same day, which, Cheney's a 6.5 hour drive. So if I needed to, I could come home on the weekend.
Right.
But it didn't make a lot of sense. So I went there and knowing that I needed to have this new independent life. And I would say that the transition went better than I expected it to. I did the whole dorm, random roommate. I knew zero people that went to Eastern except for my brother, who was a senior at Eastern when I was a freshman. And I hung out with him. We actually got really close in college, but he was older than I was. He was, into partying. He was of age. And I wasn't drinking. I didn't party. I was fully committed to being an athlete. So I really just dove into hanging out with people in the dorms, hanging out with people in the track team, hanging out with people in my classes. And it just opened my eyes hugely to there are a lot of people in the world that are similar to me and way more similar to me than the small pond of Willow Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved going to Valley, but it was like a breath of fresh air. I could do and whatever I wanted, be whoever I wanted. My dad wasn't the principal of Eastern. A weird thing is, you went to Sissus, didn't you, for leadership camp?
No, I didn't.
You never did go. Okay, so that was like a pre-college type experience for me, because going into my senior year of high school, I was ASB president, and we had to go to leadership camp at Sispus with like the 6 of us that were on the ASB.
Oh, I did do
Okay.
that. Okay, yeah.
So it might have looked a little different when you were there because they change it year to year. But the way it was then is they would split you up from everybody from your school on purpose. So you would go into a group of all these random people from all of these random small, huge high schools across Washington State, and you would hang out with that group all week long. You were in a cabin with nobody from your school. And they kind of went away from that because students were stressed about that exact thing. Like, I want to be with the kids from my school. But for me, it was like I flourished. I loved it. I cried when I left Sissus because I loved it so much. I think it was the first time that I could be myself completely with peers, out on my family's property. I was my own weird self.
Yeah.
But at school, I did kind of have this shadow of my dad that I didn't even realize. When I was there, I was crazy. I was outgoing. I was weird. I was fun. I was all the things that I always was. Competitive, unapologetically competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I used to get made fun of for raising my hand too much in junior high, like for caring too much about school. I was made fun of for that. Now I'm in a place where all these other people are crazy and wild and weird, or just whoever they are. And I loved all the people that were there. It's all these people who are ASB members from across the state. And you do a lot of like team building and deep conversations about things that have happened to you in your life. It was kind of intense, but in the best way. And that was right before my senior year started. And so it was like right when I got ready to go to college, I knew it was going to be more of that. So I was nervous, but I was ready for that. And that's exactly what it was. That was my experience. I loved it. I loved college. I missed my family. I came home in the summers, but I loved my freedom. And I was also lucky being on the track team. You have automatic friends, as you know,
yeah.
playing basketball
For sure.
in college. That's a little different. You can.
I feel like that helps with the transition a lot.
Yes,
I walked into 12 friends, and all of a sudden, now you're best friends up by the end of the year.
Yeah, and you're going through things together.
Yeah.
You're all going through the experience together. The college experience, the working hard, the competitiveness, the missing your families. You're way out of state where you're at.
Yeah.
So I don't know if did you have homesickness?
I probably got it 5-6 times.
Okay.
And it hit me hard.
Really?
Like,
Yeah, you went far.
Really, really bad. Like, I would skip class. I couldn't get out of bed.
Really?
Practices. I probably never performed worse in my life.
Oh.
I was just wanted to lay and sleep all day, and it lasts about 2 or 3 days. I didn't feel sick, like actually sick, and so I'm like, okay, I know what this is, and I'm like thinking about family, so my mind is just other
Hmm.
places, and it hit me really hard. I was didn't even know it was a thing until I got there, and I was okay. I understand.
Well, that's a good experience for you to have going into teaching, talking to students that are going to go off to college or take a job far away from their families, especially in our area. We have students that haven't left Pacific County, you know?
Right?
So
Yes.
it's really impactful for them to hear stories like that are real.
Yeah, but I think the risk, and I mean, I say it hit me really hard, but my experiences there were so much fun and exciting that I really encourage to move away.
Right. Well, there's also something to be said for overcoming what you were feeling.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't really get a ton of homesickness at Eastern, but I did at the end of my time in Spain, which I'm sure you have a question about that later. But it's definitely something that can shape you and make you a stronger person and gives you a different perspective and probably helps you understand what other people, have gone through. I think it's a good thing if you can overcome it.
Hmm.
And there's situations where, kids will give up on it and come home. And I think that's okay too. I had friends in Spain that came home early and that's all okay. But if you can work through some of those personal difficulties, it's only going to make you a better person, I think.
The good thing for me about being in basketball and 2,000 miles away was I didn't have the option to come home. I was committed in season. There was no time.
Hmm.
You physically can't, so you have to get through it no matter what,
Hmm.
or tumble into depression.
Right.
That's the only two options you have,
Hmm.
which is really scary.
Yeah, it is really scary. And if you don't have the right supportive system, it would be easy to fall into depression,
Hmm.
you know? So I'm guessing that with your family supporting you from afar, and your teammates, they probably helped lift you through those moments, but it's also like a personal battle.
Yeah,
You
and
decided to lift yourself up
consciously.
consciously.
um, but we're so fortunate now with the technology.
Hmm.
Like I can call my parents like this, and
Right.
I can see them face to face. It's not
Yeah.
the same as being in person, but
Right.
it's getting close.
So I don't know if you knew this, but when I lived in Spain, it was 2013. Some people had a new smartphone. I didn't. I went to Spain and bought a Spanish flip phone that cost like half a euro or whatever to like text somebody. So I didn't text anybody. They actually have this thing called a toque where you like call someone like when you're gonna go pick them up from their house and then you hang up so it doesn't cost any money. But that's like their signal, like, hey, I'm here.
Oh,
That's where I was at. So I could Skype, but it was a 9-hour time difference. So that was a difficulty when I was there. Is I didn't have the internet at the tip of my fingers. I was like logging into the hostel Wi-Fi that was spotty, to try to Skype my parents and find a time with a 9-hour time difference to talk to them. So it's different now. I know people that have traveled abroad recently. It's still very scary and a huge step, and you're not physically with those that you want to be with, and there's all these cultural differences and whatnot, but you can pretty much talk to anybody at any time, text
yeah.
people all the time. And I'm actually thankful that I didn't have that when I was there because I had to just be one with the culture.
Hmm.
Had to become Spanish for a while and just deal with it. And I did get some anxiety at the end there. I was ready to come home, but it was all good learning experiences. I stuck it out.
That's good.
Yeah. I told you I was there 9 months to the day, and the big joke was that I was going to come home with a baby, but I didn't.
Held off.
Yeah, I held off the
It
whole
would have
9
been
months.
day one and then come
Yeah.
home with the kid.
Yep.
So jumping into college athlete, um, a big thing nowadays is stress and kids, young adults getting burnt out
Mhm.
and all of this. How did you deal with your emotions and your stress that's put on you at the college level?
Well, one thing I would say, which you probably know, is right off the bat, being a small town athlete, where you have some pretty decent success and you're a big fish in a small pond.
Mm-hmm.
And you go from that to being a small fish in a big pond. That's something that you have to get used to. For me, I didn't expect to go in and be some awesome athlete. I was kind of just along for the ride. My true passion was basketball, but I was just better at track and I got offered a scholarship. So I was kind of just going to give it a try. And for the first 2 years, I loved it. I loved being part of the team. I loved all the people on the team. I made some really good friends. I loved traveling to other states. Um, I struggled my first year, which is typical for a pole vaulter without that much practice. I
Mm-hmm.
had to relearn, had to like undo some of my habits and relearn my form. It's a very technical sport,
Right.
like super technical. And so it was frustrating my freshman year, but I was so happy with the environment and my coach was awesome that I enjoyed it. And going into my sophomore year, that was actually my most successful year. I had my best jump. I was doing awesome in practices, feeling super confident. And I had a weird experiment, not experiment, I had a weird experience, I guess experiment kind of, where I had a couple bad meets, and that was kind of it for me. I was never the same pole vaulter after that. And honestly, I think that was the first time in my life that I was really not successful at something and I wanted to quit my junior and senior year and my dad convinced me not to, and it was one of the best things I ever did because for 2 years I struggled mentally at this thing that used to be easy for me, and I felt like I was a disappointment to others. I was disappointing myself, but I stuck it out and I pushed through it for the first time in my life. I really had to just suck it up, kind of, and treat it like a job. I was being paid to do it, and I was going to be the best that I could be. And that wasn't the best I was capable of, but it was the best that I was at that time. And it's pretty typical for that to happen to pole vaulters in college because it's a head game. It's a dangerous sport. You have a couple weird falls, you break a couple poles, that gets to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always that kid that was a huge daredevil, climb to the very top of the tree, jump off of the cliff, whatever, I would do it. And in high school, pole vaulting, I didn't really think about it. I had some weird falls. I didn't know what I was doing half the time, but I wasn't overly thinking about it. I wasn't overthinking it. I just did it. I just would run and jump. Then I'd go do hurdles. Then I'd go do the 100. Then I'd go do the relay. I was just so busy. I didn't think about it. And my freshman and sophomore year, I did do hurdles and did okay, but my main event was pole vault. And just honing into that one event ended up being a lot of pressure. And it was like the older I got, the more I thought about what I was actually doing, which is flinging my body, 13 feet into the air with a pole and trying to land on a mat. And a weird thing that happened was I was actually dating this guy from DeSales my freshman year, and a kid from DeSales High School fell pole vaulting and died. And you hear something like that, it's like, I am doing a sport where I could die.
Mm-hmm.
It's not likely, and it's kind of a freak thing when that happens, but a lot of pole vaulters go down that rabbit hole. And what happened it was pretty specific, honestly. I was ranked second in my conference for pole vault, and the way I was jumping, I was going to get first. That's where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
I was like going 13.6 and practice all the time, like no problem. I went to Missoula, Montana for my conference meet, and my opening height is there's only two people left at that point because I'm doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started when I was doing warm ups, there was a huge headwind, and that plays a big role
Right.
into any field event, right? For track. And you just adjust. So because there was this giant headwind, my steps had to get brought closer. And with pole vault, it's very specific. You have to be a certain length away from the box when you plant. If you're too far inside, you're going to get stuck. If you're too far outside, you're going to like potentially fall. Like there's a lot that goes wrong if you're 6 inches off, which is a crazy thought, but you just do that. You know, you just adjust and you go and you run and you jump. So what happened was I waited so long for everyone else to jump. The wind swapped. There was a huge tailwind. So I went from having a huge headwind to having a huge tailwind, and I didn't know it. So I just ran from where my step was. I jumped and it's called getting jammed. Like your step's so far inside that you can't possibly jump. You're just too far underneath. So what happens, it kind of yanks your arms and you can't swing up. So that happened, which was fine. It happens. I had a great run. I was like super fast. My coach was like, no stress. We just need to move your step back. That looked awesome. Let's do it again. Same thing. And I just mentally lost it. I couldn't believe I missed my opening height. I was thinking all these thoughts like, I shouldn't have started that high. I should have started lower. Why did I do that? What if I do that again? What if I know higher?
Yeah.
And so what I did was I changed my run. I started striding out, and my steps got messed up to the point where I planted and I jumped, but I got rejected back onto the runway. Not injured, just ran out of it.
Right.
So that happened on jump 2. You get 3. So now I'm panicking. I had 1 jump left. What happened is if I had made the jump, I would have won conference, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing on my 3rd jump. Totally just broke down, did a really weird run, changed it completely, not my normal self, got rejected back onto the runway. I know how I didn't place.
What did your coach say after your second jump?
Oh, man. I wish I could remember. I think he knew I was panicking, but he also knew I was totally fine. So he was just trying to help me understand that I was totally fine. I just needed to just go in and do a normal run, a normal jump. But I know he could see the panic was there. And the worst thing is that I'd already qualified for the NCAA championship. I'd already hit the qualifying mark because you can hit it at any regular meet. And so then I went and trained. We only have a handful of athletes that make it to that. So there's only fewer than 10 of us probably who continued practicing for the next 2 weeks. Everybody else on the team had a break. And I did fine. I was jumping like normal, but it just stuck in my brain. I just couldn't shake it. And it's scary, realizing you changed this little thing and you're getting rejected to the runway. Like, what else can go wrong? All these thoughts just poisoned my athlete brain.
Yeah.
And I went to the NCAA conference meet at the University of Oregon, which is Tracktown, USA, and did the exact same thing for 3 jumps. I changed my run. I got jammed, like where I wasn't in a position that I could swing, and it rejected me back onto the runway 3 times. I did the same thing. And it was the downfall of my track career. I never recovered. But as sad of a story as that is, it is. It's sad. Like, I still have some sadness and some regret, but I had to do, at that point in my life, the hardest thing I'd ever had to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had to keep competing, and I was pretty bad for 2 years. I still qualified for conference, indoor and outdoor the next season, and indoor the next season. There was only one I didn't make it. It was my senior year outdoor, where I was very ready to be done.
Right.
But it was a time where I talked to my dad very openly. I talked to my coach very openly about wanting to quit. I didn't feel that I deserved a scholarship anymore. I was qualifying for conference, but I wasn't placing. I wasn't competing at the level that I could have been competing at. And they both convinced me to stick it out. They both wanted me to. And if my coach had been like, listen, you are struggling every practice, it's annoying, I like, get your negative mindset out of here, I would have been like, I understand. But he was like, I want you here. We want you here. Like, keep trying.
Because he's seen your potential.
Yeah, and he cared about me, and I cared about him. He's a great guy, and he didn't want me to give up.
Right.
And I didn't, and it was hard. It was hard to accept that I should have been better. It was hard to accept that I let it get to me, and every practice was tough. Like, a lot of my practice runs, just in a regular practice, I didn't swing up, I didn't jump, I would just run through. And it's such a typical thing that will happen in pole vaulters' careers, and it was happening to me. And it's like, you want to change it, you know it's your choice, but you start running and your body like betrays you. Like, my brain would be like, I'm gonna jump this time like normal, it's gonna be fine, I'm safe. And I just wouldn't. It was the craziest feeling. It was just, I felt like my body was betraying me. But I still would jump. I would do like short approaches where I felt safe. I don't think I even ever said out loud that I was scared, but I was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just a weird thing. And that happens. Not everybody goes to college not everyone goes to college for a sport. It's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky enough to have the opportunity, but not everybody just gets better and better and better.
Yeah.
I just did all through my whole life. I literally would like PR every meet, like my whole senior year. It was like, I just get better all the time. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I wasn't. And that was hard. It was hard to overcome that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big mind factor
Yeah.
in that. You know what I mean? There's a thing that I learned this year through some YouTube video or something, that I was in a shooting slump. You know, I had a shooting slump mid-season. I was shooting very horribly. And my dad, I'm like, dude, I got something wrong with my mind. Like, help me out, help me out. And he sends me this video. And he's like, when you're shooting and you're thinking about the shot, you're just thinking about doing all the form things correctly, just staying on focus. When you're just thinking about that, your mind is like on a string, right? Every limb is connected. So when you're thinking about it, you're tightening. So it's almost like jerking. And it's causing you to just be off that little bit.
That's all it takes.
And if you can learn, which it's hard to do when I haven't figured it out yet, but just to be instinctual,
Right.
you know, trust your habits that you've built. Once I started to learn that, I came back. You know, I started climbing out of that hole, not at a rapid pace, but slowly getting out of it.
It's almost like strengthening your mind.
Yes.
It's hard. It's a mental game, but it's awesome that you are overcoming that. I think any athlete, actually, I know any athlete that plays a sport for long enough runs into some kind of a mental block.
Oh, for sure.
Everybody does. I told you earlier, I was dating a football player from Eastern who ended up playing in the Canadian Football League. And when we were no longer dating anymore, because when we were dating, I was in this pole vaulting slump, and he was like the most success ever. You know, won the national championship as a linebacker, like won MVP, blah, blah, blah. He got into a slump in the CFL, which now he's getting paid, you know.
Yeah.
This is his career. That's a big deal. You can't just be in a slump forever or they fire you.
Yeah.
And we only talked briefly, but I just remember him saying, I feel bad when you were having a hard time pole vaulting because I couldn't relate to you at all. And that happened to me. That's what he said. He was like, it happened to me. And I don't know in what way, you know, I'm not a football player, but he was struggling, not getting tackles or whatever it was.
Yeah.
He went from being an instinctual athlete to, oh, I'm not doing as well. And then you start thinking about
You start
it.
thinking
And then,
about that.
and your
Mhm.
body does just what you were saying. You tense up and you don't just go. You don't just do
Then
what
you're
you
a
always
second
just did.
late. And
Yeah, it just takes that little tiny change. And for me, the worst thing was I knew all of what you're saying, but in the back of my mind, it was like, you could get hurt if
right.
you don't do this right. So it got to a point for me where it became not worth it. Like I actually saw a counselor for the first time. It was an athletic counselor um, who counseled.
Did that help?
Yes, but not in the way my coach probably expected it to. He made me go. I was like, at the time, definitely had a different mindset about counseling. Like, I'm a huge advocate for it now, but I thought, like, that means there's something wrong with me. That's so embarrassing. What would I say? How would that be? And I thought I was going to go into this counseling session and be convinced to continue pole vaulting, or told like, you can overcome this. And it wasn't that. She was more like, how does this make you feel? Are you feeling good about this? Is this something you are, you want to strive to overcome? Have you tried these coping mechanisms and whatnot? And basically I left this hour-long session of counseling realizing I'd hit a point in my life where I didn't care that much about it anymore. I would continue pole vaulting and do my very best, but I was caring about other things more, like my career, becoming an educator. I wanted to go traveling. I was like thinking all these other things, and that just was not the most important thing to me anymore. And it was okay. That's what she helped me realize. That's okay. You can keep doing this thing, and it doesn't have to be your top priority. And I think I was putting so much pressure on myself to make that my top priority when it wasn't. It just wasn't. And so I stuck it out and did my best, and it was tough. But I also got my education degree. I also went and moved to Spain and learned Spanish and did all these other things that I wanted to do. And I just learned that that was a tough time for me mentally. So next time I go through something tough mentally, I have some skills.
That's interesting because I hit the same sort of. I think I'm in the same sort of ideal you just explained. So when I hit that slump, kind of at the end of tailed off at the end of the season, I was thinking I'm burnt out.
Yeah.
Like I feel exhausted. I don't even know if I want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Should I come back next year? Should I not? Dude, I'm like, I know I need to finish my degree. Like, school is an option. Like, I'm going to school. That's the way it's gonna be. But I was like, I don't know. Like, my mind is just other places. I'm thinking about exactly what school I want to go to, what area I want to live. I'm thinking about all these other things. But at the same time, I'm like, I have to perform. I have to perform. I have to,
Right.
I just got to get in the gym more. That's what it is. I'll just get in the
Mm-hmm.
gym more. I'll just put in 2 more hours a day. And like, I wasn't improving. I'm like, what is going on with me? Like, I am in the gym more than anybody else on the team, and these guys are outperforming me by 100 times. At that point, I went from 20 to 30 minutes a game to 5. So that was a big emotional toll too, as well. And I was just like, ah. And after season, I did a lot of reflecting. I tried to grow myself personally, and I realized like I don't have the same passion as I did, you know. But I don't want to quit. I'm gonna finish my 4 years for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And my next thing, it came up to my head. I wanted to write a book because I've been reading all this. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I want to write a book, but what am I gonna write a book about? I don't know. And then it morphed into a podcast. Oh, I can start a podcast. I can get behind this. And so before basketball games, towards about halfway through the season, I was like, I could get really tired. Like, I would want to go to sleep, like that kind of tired. So I was drinking energy drinks before the game, trying to wake up, and nothing would work. I was like, ugh, whatever. And then today, literally right before I came here, I'm looking at these questions, and it took me back to high school. I felt like I was going into a basketball game.
Oh
Like I
wow.
was that excited. Like I was so excited for this conversation. There's so much built up. Like prepping for this.
Yeah.
It's like going into a basketball game.
That's
Scouting and
cool.
all that. And I was
Yeah.
just like looking at the questions over. I'm like ready to go and stuff.
So something else in your life is giving you that same excitement.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be basketball forever.
And I think this is going to be a good way for me to balance it out.
Right.
Like Melanie or Di talking, her balance from her work is her garden, going to the farm.
Mhm.
I think this can be mine, and it would help me because if I put all my attention into this when I'm not doing basketball, I can check out. I won't even think about basketball.
Right.
That's all my attention is here,
Mhm.
which allows you to check out and
That's perfect.
refresh.
Well, that's the whole difficulty is people like you and me, our whole lives, we just worked harder if we weren't achieving something we wanted to.
Yeah.
When it comes to like mental health, you can't just work your way out of it.
Yes.
You can't just, drink energy drinks to be less tired. You can't just turn your brain off. So you have to get creative. Like you're saying right here, you have to find something else that occupies your mind because what's happening is you're trying so hard to fix something and it's not something that you can just fix in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You have to almost like stop trying to fix it to make it better.
Right.
But when it's someone like you and me, we aren't very good at
No.
letting something go. We have always hustled our way through everything to be the best that we can be. So how frustrating when the harder you try to fix something, the worse you're making it.
Yes.
Almost like you're putting too much focus and pressure on something instead of taking a break from it. And it doesn't mean, like you said, you don't have to quit, but if you can find something else that helps you feel fulfilled and helps occupy your mind and makes you happy, the rest of it is probably just going to fall into place.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to accept that. And you know what? It sucks that it takes time. Like,
yeah.
I just want to fix something now. But you can't when it has to do with, like your mental health. You can start making small steps, like we talked about earlier, habit forming things, but you can't just change something like that in a day or a week or maybe even in months. So I applaud you for finding something that helps you feel better, helps you feel excited. That's awesome. That's how I feel going into teaching most days. When I was teaching elementary, I was young. I was like 22, 23, and didn't want to go to school a lot. I was stressed out to go to school. I was feeling frustrated with my students. I was teaching third grade, and I started realizing I might need a change. And I was scared to change.
It's a big leap.
Yeah, because I left to junior high school. I always joke that I thought I was like sweet and patient like my mom because she taught preschool, and I'm not. I'm not a bad person, but I'm pretty sarcastic. And with the elementary, I just wasn't vibing with them. Yeah. And so I did take that leap to junior high school, and it was like the perfect fit for me. And nowadays, especially after having kids, it might sound weird, but it's so nice for me to get up and have a break from them and go do something that fulfills me in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I get in front of my students and I'm an extrovert, I gain energy from people, and it doesn't matter. I could have had 2 hours of sleep that night because my children don't sleep. That's a whole different podcast.
That needs its own section.
Yes, that'd be like a 5-hour podcast. But I go to school and I have a new class that comes in, every hour, which is also exciting and different from elementary. And I just get I gain energy. I just feel it. I feel like I'm buzzed almost like with energy and excitement for my kids. They probably think I'm a psycho, but I'm moving around the room and I'm talking and someone says something and I get excited and they understand something and I'm like, yes. And then I come home and I have this different kind of energy for my kids. because I spent this time at school like feeling like I was just doing something that meant something. I was, reaching kids.
Well, you are. Let's
Well,
establish. I mean, you're shaping the next generation.
okay. I feel good
Yeah.
after my encounters with students most days. But then I come home and I have like this different version of Chelsi. Like now I'm my mom's self and I've missed my kids because I've been away from them all day. And for me, every parent's different, but going to work was the best thing that ever happened for me as a mom, because I come home and I'm so happy and excited to see my kids. And when I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 6 months of Finn's life, I felt like I wasn't doing a very good job. Those were the days where I started feeling a little bit depressed and very anxious, and just like I was just quick to snap at the kid. I just wasn't totally fulfilled and happy with myself. So life is about finding that balance of what makes you feel like you're going into a basketball game in high school.
Yeah.
I love that feeling too.
Yeah.
But I don't know, this is off topic sort of, but talking about how we both gone through these issues with sports in college and realizing it's maybe not our top priority anymore. And you're right now where I was, looking to your future and thinking, what do I really want? Who do I want to be? Your career and all of that. I think about professional athletes, and I think it's pretty common for professional athletes to get into a state of depression when they're done. Because if you think about it, they have spent their whole life doing this one thing, and then it's over at a pretty young age, but older than like where you're at now,
Yeah, you 30s. Typically.
And then what? And I think that would be a really hard thing. Like, I don't even know, but I just spent some time wondering if there are counselors specifically for professional athletes who
there has
are
to be
phasing out. It just seems like that would be one of the toughest transitions, which probably sounds really weird to people who are non-athletes, but I just can't imagine like putting your all into a sport and it becomes your career and it is your life, and an injury can take you out for life, for example, or you just get older and you're not the best anymore. That just has always been something that I think there's so much more to being a professional athlete than the average person probably thinks about.
Well, if you think about it, at the end of the day, professional athletes are still people. So they probably went through the same thing that we went through, What if one day they woke up and it's like, I don't get that buzz pregame anymore?
Right.
What if I want to go into business?
Right.
What if I want to make shoes?
Right.
There's so many options out there.
And I've thought about women, because as a female athlete, if you want to start a family, what happens?
You have to give up your career.
For a while, at least.
At least, yes.
Yeah, I just can't remember which track athlete, I think a sprinter that got pregnant, had a baby, and jumped right back into it. And it was inspirational for other moms out there.
As it should
be. Not for like
professional, not like we're all professional athletes,
but just that you can do whatever you strive to do.
Yes.
But it really must be a huge thing for men and women. I think about that. If I would have loved, I wanted to be in the NBA. I don't know if you knew that about me. The NBA, not the WNBA. Back to me wanting to be a boy. But when I was a kid, I just
a little bit of gender dysphoria.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. But now thinking about that, I think about how if I had become any kind of professional athlete, that wanting to start a family really would have started to mess with me, because that's forever been what I wanted in life. And I just don't know what other people think that commit their lives to something like a sport and you're getting paid for it. So it's important. It's your literal job. What happens when you get burnt out or decide to start a family? Or
see, for me, that pressure I put on myself too, because I look at it as like my coach is paying me thousands of dollars to perform, not just to be on the team, to perform. So that pressure, especially at the next level where I'm at a 4-year university, and that's a lot of money.
Right.
So I'm like, dude, what do you, perform, dude. Like, quit messing around.
I asked my coach to pull my scholarship because I felt exactly like you're feeling. It is pressure. If you're just a walk-on, that's different.
Mhm.
Once they start paying you money, you know that the expectation is for you to perform. But also, coaches are probably way more understanding than, I realized at the time or you now. Athletes get in slumps. If you don't, you are truly a freak of nature. You can't not.
Typically, those ones are at another level.
Exactly. Yes.
The ones that go pro.
Yeah, they weren't
those
pole
are
vaulting
those
at
guys.
Eastern. Yeah, you're right though. But everyone has to have those moments. And not even just in sports. I think everybody hits moments like that in their lives. And it shapes you as a person, how you decide to deal with that and overcome it. It's part of life.
Yeah.
Life isn't perfect. We're all imperfect people.
And it's just gonna shape you.
Mhm.
You're gonna look back at that in 10 years, and I'm gonna look back and say, "Wow, I could have done this differently. I could have not have."
Right.
But
actually, one of my biggest things was I have a story about wanting to do basketball at Eastern, and my coach in high school actually had been in touch with the coach at Eastern, and they wanted me to come try out, more or less, come to a practice, play with them, see what I was all about. I was emailing the assistant coach, and they were looking for a point guard, which I was, and they had seen my 42-point game, and I think probably thought I was something different than I was because I had no 3-point shots in that game. So I don't think they knew what they were looking at necessarily. So what happened was I went to Eastern like 2 weeks before school started and moved in and went and talked to the head women's coach for track and field. And I said, hey, the basketball team is wanting me to come practice with them, and the idea has been thrown out there that I could potentially, if I made it, play basketball during the winter and then do outdoor track season and be like a dual athlete. And she was very cold about it. She said, if you choose to do that, we'll just pull your scholarship. So I left that meeting with her, which took a lot of guts for me to go talk to her. It was really scary. And just went in the bathroom in their office building and just cried so hard. I was just so upset. Like, my basketball dream's over. That's what I really wanted to do. I really wanted to play basketball in college. And I had been having some recent success. Like, I had just gone to the East-West game and got MVP. And it was like something I never thought I could have earned. Like, I just always thought I was lesser than for some reason in basketball. And then these coaches are showing a little bit of interest, and I was like, maybe I could do that. And then she just shot my dream down so fast. And there's still a part of me that thinks about,
what if I went and tried out?
What if I did?
Yeah.
How can you not think that?
Yeah.
But also, it's not something that I'm like crying about every night.
Yeah.
But occasionally I'm like, how different would my life have been? Honestly, I think I wouldn't have made the team, or I would have been on the practice squad, or something like that. Or they would have actually taught me that it's important to learn how to shoot a basketball, and I could have been awesome.
Yeah.
But life goes on, and
could have just made it to the end. No.
yeah, right. Could have been in the NBA. But life is a series of choices, and you make the best choice for yourself at the time. And I very much believe in the choices you make happen for a reason. And it's the butterfly effect. Had I tried out for basketball and made the team and done that, maybe I would have broken my leg, or maybe I would have had one awesome season and then been cut from the team. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's not worth thinking about, but it is interesting that
that's pretty much what I've accepted too, is everything's going to happen for a reason, and I also look for lessons to learn.
Right. You have to.
Actions you've taken, and deal with the consequences, and also deal with the success.
Right.
Learn from that.
Right.
It's not just you win or you learn, lose or you fail. It's learn and you learn for me.
I like that. Yeah, I agree
it's
completely. That's exactly what I want to teach my children.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a lesson to be learned, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's all about how you handle the successes and the failures and everything in between. That is life. How you handle
literally everything that
Yeah.
happens to you. And it's, think about everything that happens to us every day. Always a lesson to be learned.
Yes.
It's almost overwhelming when you have that realization that every single day things are happening to you that are shaping you as a person, and the choices you make for how to deal with those things are shaping you as a person. And I feel like some people don't look at all those small things. I'm not a big picture person. I'm more of like small day-to-day person, and realizing that that's going to affect the big picture,
I think the same exact. It's crazy. So like when I think about goals and such, I set a big goal, right? And then a roadmap of how I'm going to get there is what am I doing every day to get to that goal? Day to day discipline, one of my favorite words, to get to my dream, ultimate goal. What am I doing today to get there?
Right. And the nice thing about that is that you feel like you're achieving part of your goal now. I do goal setting with my junior high leadership classes. I'm big into goal setting too. I also am big into, if you don't write your goal down, then it's not a real goal. You can have goals in your brain, but I teach my students that you need to write it down. And we actually do SMART goals. I don't know if you've heard of that.
On the
it's an
computers?
acronym. No, so SMART is specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic, and timely. Because you're already doing all those things. You're telling me right now with your goal setting. I know you're doing those things, but kids that don't know how to goal set, that don't naturally do it, maybe need to actually sit down and think about, like, is this a realistic goal? Timely. When am I going to start this? What are my actions that are going to lead to this? Like my day-to-day actions. When am I going to check in on this goal? Is it something I need to check in weekly, but the actual goal is not until next basketball season? It's interesting when you break down goal setting with kids that most of them really lack the understanding of how to set a goal. And really, it's that purpose. It's hard to teach kids. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We did weekly goals in my class last year, and I always had that question. Why are we setting goals this week? There's always something to set a goal for. And until you can figure out the why for you, you're not going to be very successful. I can teach you how to do it, but I can't make you care about it. And that's, if everybody could set goals, I think we would all just be thriving.
Yeah.
But the thing that sucks about setting goals is that you might not achieve them. And that's a common theme I see with students too. If you don't try, you don't fail. The harder you try to do something, the more you might disappoint yourself. So when I try to do goal setting with kids and I try to make it realistic, but push yourself a little bit, you'll notice that a lot of kids are afraid to set a goal because they don't want to be disappointed.
They don't want to fail.
Yeah, it's not about achieving the goal though. It's about the road trying to get there. Like you said, what are you doing every day to get there? Well, I guarantee that you are achieving something if you're working on it every single day.
Yeah. 1% better that's my goal.
Exactly.
By the end of the year, you're going to be 3.6 times better.
Right. And you don't set goals, you really never know what you're capable of. Yeah. I wish I had been more of a goal setter in high school.
I was a goal setter. Like, I would write them down, but I never understood how much went into it.
Yeah.
I never understood laying out a roadmap, writing down what are you doing today. I just kind of popped things into my head and was like, this will help me.
Right. Which is still important.
Yeah.
But if you really want to set goals and be serious about it, you do want to think about those days.
And we're back.
All right. That's what happens when you live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, a little internet disconnection there. So we'll back up, cover what we just covered. So after college, we went to Spain.
Yes.
Right.
And so I was just explaining that part of my decision to go there was because I didn't have any friends that were able to go traveling with me. So I was trying to go travel through a different route, which led to applying for a program to teach English. Originally, I was hoping to go for a few months, and the program I applied for was 9. I was literally applying to go and filling out the application thinking I wasn't going to go. It was just kind of like for fun. I'm going to fill this out, see what happens. And the more that I filled it out, the more I got to thinking, am I really going to do something like this? And I just kind of like put the thought, pushed it away in the back of my brain. And it got to the end of the application, and it was like, submit a $250 fee to finalize that application, which I didn't know because I probably didn't research it very well. So I called my parents and was like, hey, so I'm filling out this application to move to Spain. And my mom's like, what? You know? My sister had lived in Spain, but it was a semester abroad through WSU, so it was a little different. And I said, I don't think I'm going to do it, but now that I have to commit a little bit of money, I might. And my dad's, you know, chirping in the background, like, just do it. You can say no. It's not that much money. My mom's in the background going, Rob, we don't want Chelsea to move to Spain. She's 22 years old. That's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. So, long story long, I submitted the application, got accepted, and was like, well, I have to make a decision. I don't know what else I'm going to do. I'm not ready to get a teaching job. I'm kind of done in Cheney. And it just didn't feel right to keep staying in this college town, you know? So I just decided to do it. And it was really out of character for me to do something like that as a small town girl that moved to small town Cheney and loved it. Moving to Spain, that was a different type of scenario. But I did it. And the funny thing is I didn't really freak out until right when I finished packing. It was like the day before I left, I think. I just had kind of been suppressing these emotions about the whole thing. And then the day before I left, I'll never forget, I couldn't get everything packed right into this one bag. I had this one big carry-on, right? And I just kind of freaked out and was like, no, it won't fit. I can't do this. Why am I even going? What am I doing? And my dad was like, there it is. I've been waiting for this. You have been way too calm about this. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, I've been waiting for you to freak out. You're moving to Spain for 9 months. You've never even flown by yourself. You're getting on a plane tomorrow for the first time by yourself, and you're not coming back. And I was like, yeah, it is pretty crazy. And he was like, well, you had your freak out. Do you feel better? Are you still going? And I was like, yeah, I'm still going. And then my parents drove me to the airport the next day, and my dad had to go get something in Walmart, out of all places, and came back with the cheapest little necklace I'd ever seen. And it was a little music note. And he was like, when you get to Spain, one of the first things I want you to do is buy a guitar, because you spent the last 4 years of college, you know, messing around playing guitar, and you love music, and do that. And that's going to be your one thing you can do when you start to feel homesick. So I did. I went to Spain, and oh man, there's a million stories there. But I bought a cheap little classical guitar, and when I started getting anxiety, I did turn to that. And the saddest thing was I had to leave that guitar there, because to fly with a musical instrument of that size, you have to buy a seat. I don't know if you knew that. There might be different rules now, but it was who I was flying through. That was the only option. I couldn't, for some reason, pack it. I don't know what the rule was, but yeah, I left that guitar behind, tried to sell it for 30 euros, and nobody wanted it, so I think I ended up giving it away. But anyway, that's the story of how I got there.
So tell me about the Spanish culture, because I've met a lot of people from Spain.
Really?
It's like a big international school. So like some of a few, 4 or 5, my best friends are from Spain and Madrid.
Whoa,
so that's
cool.
why I really wanted to go down this route.
Yeah, I want to talk to those guys. That's awesome. I don't meet a lot of Spanish people. Also, one of my huge pet peeves is when people call people not from Spain Spanish, because you're only Spanish if you're from Spain.
Exactly.
I just had a student the other day. I said that I went to a Mexican store to get some Mexican candy, and he was like, you mean Hispanic? And I was like, no, I mean Mexican. It's specific candies from Mexico. Mm-hmm. He was like, I thought that was bad to say. And I have this little Mexican girl in the classroom who's looking at me to see how are you going to respond to this comment, because he didn't mean anything by it. He thought
Yeah.
I, accidentally said something rude. And I've always had a thing about this because I'm a Spanish teacher. If somebody or something is from Mexico, they're Mexican. And if somebody's from Mexico, they're proud to be from Mexico.
Mhm.
Just like a Spanish person is proud to be from Spain, or an Irish person is that
That's
not true?
that's a good question though, because I've had some conversations where during like the Spanish Civil War,
Right.
like they don't fly their flag anymore. They're
Oh, are you kidding me?
because it's a sign of like the wrong side,
Right.
at least on her from her end, and so she's like, it means something negative,
Really?
and
That's
like
interesting.
people might gun you down for running it.
Are you kidding me? I never
Yes.
heard anything like that the whole time I was in Spain.
Really?
Yep. Not
Okay,
once.
I was so curious. I was like,
Huh.
that is nuts. Like,
I mean, everyone is entitled to their own opinions and feelings. I don't know if that was just her, or maybe was she from Madrid?
she was from Spain.
Do you know where in Spain?
I don't know.
Because maybe that was a part of her local culture, or maybe it's a bigger piece of Spain that I totally missed when I was there,
Mhm.
which is 100% possible because I was in a foreign country speaking a foreign language, so
Yeah.
could have been over my head, but I didn't hear anything about that.
I think it was one part.
Okay,
I think it was one part.
could have been.
Or like you don't fly it when you're down there.
Right,
That's
okay.
one of them
Yeah,
things.
hadn't heard of that. That's super interesting.
Yeah, she said it was like a culture shock to see like people flying American flags.
Oh yeah,
everywhere.
well, that's for sure an American thing.
Yeah.
Everyone in Spain was like, you guys are obsessed with your flag, and you guys are obsessed with like the Pledge of Allegiance and singing the Star Spangled Banner. And so that was weird to hear because obviously I was used to it.
Yeah, it's normalized.
My sister dated a Spaniard who came back and visited, and he was laughing at a Mariners game because everybody stood up and had their hand on their heart. And she was so mad at him because she was like, when I came to your country, I respected your culture. Now you're in my country. Don't make fun of my culture, which I get too.
Yeah.
But he didn't realize that was offensive. And it's, to each her own.
Yeah.
That offended my sister. Would it offend her now? Probably not, but I just think that his demeanor about it was like, you don't even understand why we're doing this. But I mean, those are all good, interesting questions. But you think about it, your friend, just like someone coming to America laughing about the Star Spangled Banner or all of our flags everywhere. You guys are obsessed with your country. Mm-hmm. Any American that you ask about the American flag can have a number of opinions about that,
That's
so sure. you take a look at the culture of a country, and it's hard because everyone's an individual person, and particularly in America, we have a wide range of opinions and cultures, just within our country, so it's a little different here. But I always remind my students in my Spanish classes, when you're researching a Spanish-speaking country, because I like for them to research the different Spanish-speaking countries. There's 20 of them whose official language is Spanish, 21 if you count Puerto Rico, which is of course a territory of the U.S. But I like them to research these countries with a mindset that just because you find on the internet that, all Mexicans like spicy food. Not everybody likes spicy foods. You might come across these blanketed statements about these people from these countries, and no, that might be true about many people from that country, but keep in mind that everybody's an individual. Also, I try to get them to notice that all the Spanish-speaking countries are different. A lot of them have a lot of similarities, but people in America, or at least in Washington State, because that's my experience, tend to think the Spanish-speaking countries are all Mexico.
And they're all the same.
They're all the same. But, Spain is in Europe.
Yeah.
It's not even in Latin America. It's so different. And there's Equatorial Guinea, which is the only Spanish-speaking country in Africa, or whose official language is Spanish. And so anytime a kid gets that country, it's like, that's going to be a lot different because it's in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Spain is going to be a lot different because it's in Europe. Then you start hitting,
But they're close.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty.
That is true. Yeah, it's all crazy.
It's
but,
borderline.
right. It's interesting because people don't realize how different all the Spanish speaking countries are. And so it's fun because kids will come across all kinds of information that I haven't learned about the different countries. But one thing that people used to always assume or ask me about when I got back from Spain was the food. And everyone thinks it's like spicy and tacos and enchiladas, It's not like Mexican food at all. And first of all, what kind of Mexican food are you thinking of? Are you thinking of Mexican American?
Mexican American.
Or are you actually talking about the food in Mexico? Because that's also different, or can be. But Spanish food, I kind of sucked. Don't tell your Spanish friends. But
hopefully they're not listening.
Well, they may now that you brought this up. No, it's weird. It was way more bland, not a lot of spices, a lot of fried food. They're famous for their olive oil. They're famous for olives. So everything's cooked in olive oil. Everything's part of the pig. They eat tons of ham, jamon. And I'm not a big ham person. So the food was okay, but just vastly different from Mexican food. And every Spanish-speaking country has their, differences like that. So
looking into like the people, behaviorals, characteristics, things like that, what did you notice? Because what I noticed from all of the ones that I've met, it's super loving, inviting. So it's like when you see them and they say hi, they all come up, they all hug, full hugs, not no.
Did you get Dos Besos on your cheeks?
Kisses on the cheeks, things like that. And I was like, this is weird, isn't it? At first it made me like a little uncomfortable.
Right.
And then the more I got to know them and ask them questions, I was like, oh, okay, that's normal.
Right. I for sure agree with that aspect of the Spanish culture. You do get the 2 kisses, whether you want them or not. I did have a guy at a bar once pretend, hi buddy, pretend that he accidentally missed and hit me on the lips. So beware, all you young ladies going to Spain. I had the Dos Besos taken advantage of once. Hey bud, I'm just talking to Logan. You can hang out here, but I probably can't play with you, okay? You can say hi if you want.
Want to say hi?
Okay, you can just stand there. Anyway, yes, I was in a small town in southern Spain. So I was in Priego de Córdoba, which is pretty close to the ocean. If you know Spain at all, for anyone listening, Priego is a small town right in between Sevilla, Córdoba, and Malaga. And I requested to go to a small town rather than a city for all obvious reasons, probably, my upbringing. And everybody there treated me like family. Like I was taken in as a member of their family. I was invited to all of these dinners. I was invited to parties. I lost my keys to my apartment once and freaked out, was crying. And this lady that I knew who I actually I tutored her in English, came over to my house and was like, we're going to go get new keys right now. We're going to take care of this. I'm going to take you out for a Tinto de Verano and you're going to have a drink and we're going to forget about this. And I'm not going to let you leave until I know you're okay. And for Mama Freeze, it was the best ever because she even from far away, Alabama, Washington, got that sense of family. I was just taken into that community and she knew I had all these people caring for me like I was their kid. And it was awesome. I always felt totally safe there. And I think that is a big part of Spanish culture. A big part of a lot of Spanish cultures, hi bud, you can sit with me, is that families live together until they're married off. And a lot of times parents come back and live with their kids when they're older. And a lot of times even your kid's spouse moves in with you. And it's really normal. And I kind of like that. I came from a household where, it's an open door, come home anytime. open the fridge, look and see what food's in the cupboards, do your laundry. I'll do your laundry.
Yeah.
And that's very much how Spanish families are. Like, we will take care of our family forever. And when we get old, you take care of us.
Yeah. I learned that quickly too,
Yeah.
talking to them and stuff like that. And it was fascinating because I'm like, no way I would live with my parents when I'm, 30.
Right.
They're like, I don't, we're just so close.
And save money.
Yeah.
And there isn't housing.
And their
sometimes.
economy is a lot different than ours.
Exactly.
It's tough. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot tougher to live
That's
down
it.
there.
And a lot of people who were in their 20s, like similar to my age when I was there, didn't have jobs, couldn't find jobs. So it was like, yeah, live with your parents until you're on your own 2 feet. And why wouldn't you just live here until you're married and maybe just have your wife live here too? Like, till they're all good to go.
One thing that they were telling me about was a test out of high school that was your qualification for jobs.
Yeah.
It was like there was no college opportunities. It was like in high school, if you weren't on top of your stuff, you could be stuck qualifying for a garbage man. That is it.
Right.
But if you did really well, you were good. You could be a doctor, and you could have multiple jobs. And
the weird thing about you saying that is that was all explained to me in Spanish, and I feel like I missed part of what they had to go through. But I remember them, my peers, my Spanish peers, talking to me about.
Mommy, can I have a chapstick?
I bet Dad will let you have your chapstick. Go right in the house, and I bet he'll give you a snack too. Welcome to motherhood. Anyway, I remember them talking about having to take these really important tests, and they were like studying for these important tests, and I didn't quite get it. I did have friends that were going to universities. I specifically remember a guy who was becoming an engineer, but it was like he was doing something that most people didn't. That's the feeling that I got about it. But everything that I learned in Spain, you have to realize, was in my second language. So I feel like a lot of things I missed. I'd get into these conversations with people and I'd hear, maybe 70% of what they said,
Right.
Especially in the beginning when my conversation skills were pretty poor. I have to ask though, one of the things that Spain is infamous for is their people are late to everything. Did you have that experience, or were your Spanish friends more Americanized where they had to be on time? Because it was real. You show up 15 minutes late and then you're on time, or maybe still early. It is not rude to show up late. It is weird almost to show up on time to like a date, or a meeting even. It was the weirdest thing.
I mean,
very casual.
The probably closest Spanish friends, they were pretty open with me talking about it. And one of them, they're pretty Americanized now because they were in sports. They're both basketball players. And so they were on time most of the time. But she's like, my mom's coming. So she said she'd be here around this time. She'll probably be a couple hours late. And I didn't even think anything of it until you said that.
Oh, yeah. It's real. I remember trying to read up about culture shock going to Spain, trying to prepare myself. And it was more true than I could have ever imagined it being. I did a lot of tutoring sessions. I taught adults English. And there was this guy who taught at school with me. His name was Francisco. He was the coolest ever. He was like my dad of Spain. He would be 15, 20 plus minutes late to something he was paying me for. And then I'd be like, are we going to stay 20 minutes late? Or are you just paying for that time? My American brain is like, what am I doing here? Did I get the wrong time? Did I misunderstand? We were Spanish. All the time I was feeling kind of crazy because everybody was showing up late to everything. My friends would be like, do you want to go out, meet for a beer and watch the soccer game, whatever? And it was like, me and my American friends would be like, what time should we show up? What time should we actually show up? It was always a guessing game, and everyone was different, but it was common. And the siesta, taking a nap or taking a 2-hour break from 2 to 4 is still a very real thing there. And excuse you. As far as I remember, sorry, my son is tooting in the corner and thinks it's funny. As far as I remember from my time there, the siesta in the afternoon comes from, hey Jackson, hey, if you're gonna be loud, you have to go in the house or go play in the yard, okay? Thank you. Stem from the really hot summer hours. So it was so hot and there wasn't air conditioning.
Right.
People would have to shut down their shops and would have to close down their restaurants in order to stay cool. And it's just kind of like, even with places that have air conditioning, so many places shut down during siesta time. And also on Sundays. Spain, like many Spanish speaking countries, is a very Catholic country. And Sunday's a day of, help me out here, Sabbath,
Yeah.
day of rest.
Day of rest. That's always
Family
yeah.
time, whatever you want to call it. And if you, in my small town, if you didn't have groceries on a Sunday, good luck.
Right.
Like there might be a restaurant open, so you're gonna eat at that one, or you don't have food because the local stores close down on Sundays. That was something I had to get used to. Where America, in my opinion, too much pushes work, make money. Spain is on the opposite
Right.
end of that. Like, let's shut down our shop for a couple hours and go have a 2-hour lunch with friends and family and enjoy that time.
It's a very, I feel like a tight knit
Yes,
kind of country
and
feel.
slow. Everything's just like, I heard a lot of Spanish people saying their experiences in America where everything's so fast. Like when you go to a restaurant in America, it's like the waiter's like coming up to give you your tab and like you're ready to check out and you are ready. You go, you eat, you leave. That is very much not the Spanish way.
No, they'll stop, have a cigarette, hang out, move the bag.
Maybe have another beer, a cerveza, maybe just talk for an hour after you're done with your meal, and nobody's trying to rush you out of there. You like almost can't get your tab. Like,
Yeah.
you sit there and you're like, is anyone ever gonna bring me my bill? And that's just one of those weird small differences. But I like it. I think I would almost like it more now, going back after being, mixed into the hustle of the job and life here, which does seem busy and fast paced.
And I heard it was more of a vacation spot, like retirement. Like there's a lot of older people. It's relaxing. That's what I've heard.
That makes sense to me. It's not something I really noticed
From a tourist.
Yeah. So I was not in a tourist city, but anytime I did go to a bigger city, there were a lot of older people, and I could see people retiring there for sure. So, yeah.
What are they doing up there?
Oh, I just asked Jamie that yesterday. I heard a rumor that he's going to be building a shop up there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. One last question. Did you ever go to the big parties out there where they're out till 6 a.m.? Because their dinners are like 9 o'clock. What I heard.
Are you making me admit how much alcohol I drank in Spain?
Not even that. I just want to hear the time zones confirmed.
That is, I mean, I am forgetting so many parts of the Spanish culture, but that is for sure part of it. So mealtime in general is weird.
Yes.
They usually eat 4 meals a day. Would it be, I'm forgetting now, the second or third is in Spain called a merienda, which can loosely translate as a snack. But it's like, I guess it's a snack, I believe, after breakfast and before lunch. So the kids at my school got at it too, so they could go home and eat their merienda. And it would be like, they have like a juice or a chocolate milk and some kind of a snack, like, French fries or a piece of ham or, I don't know, a piece of toast with jam. Just a couple things, and then they'd have lunch later, and then dinner. 9 p.m. is pretty common for dinner time.
Very common.
And their dinners are pretty stretched out. You enjoy your time together, you talk a lot, you digest your food. And as far as going out and having parties, yeah, I did stay up until like 5 or 6 a.m. a couple times, and that was was pretty normal for people my age, and I do not how people function like that. I do know how. A lot of them didn't have jobs, and they would sleep until 2 p.m. But it was just crazy. It was weird because in Spain you can go to bars at 18 and drink, and sometimes younger people were at the time getting into bars, and that was pretty normal. And it was like the 18 to 21-year-olds would go out at like 10, 11, 12. And if you were my age, where I was like 22, you didn't actually get to the bar until like midnight
Right.
or 1.
It's
And the bars
crazy.
didn't close down to, like they do in Washington. So you partied late. People stayed up late. Dances go on late. Like their Semana Santa celebrations late. Their Carnival celebrations, week-long celebrations, all day, all night. Like people in Spain know how to stay up late, know how to party. That's for sure.
We a quick story. We rented a lake house,
Oh, you did?
and we had like 10 or 12 Spanish people come in there. So it was like 15 of us in this house, so we could split it, $30 a person or whatever. And from the time we got there to the time we left, it was one big party, and they were up till 7 in the morning both days, and one guy never slept.
How?
Okay, so I will not forget. I went to sleep probably at 4, and I was like one of the first people to sleep. And I woke up at about 9:30, and I walked up on the porch. He's the only one left. He's sitting in the hot tub by himself with a speaker, just screaming, singing as loud as he can. Hadn't gone to sleep.
Oh my gosh. It must be a Spanish gene or something.
I don't know how they do it.
I couldn't hang. I tried to like twice. I think I stayed up till 5 or 6 and was dead for like a week. And I only worked at a school teaching English 3 hours a day, 4 days a week. So it's not like I was super busy with my job either, but that is some serious physical recovery.
Yeah.
Even if you're not drinking, just staying up that late and sleeping that little, you must have to train your body to do that.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I don't either. Spanish people are something else, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely want to connect with those people, though. I think I have met one Spanish person since I moved back from Spain 10 years ago. Yes. And it was so awesome because I could understand her accent so much better than local people from Mexico. I have a really hard time with the accent and the vocabulary from around here. She's probably offering you some, but we're almost done here. We'll come eat. That was for people listening. That was my husband coming back showing chicken, I think.
And steak.
And what was it?
It looked like a steak on
A
it.
steak. He said a steak. I was like, he just offered you a cigarette. What are you saying? Anyway, my husband just barbecued and wants to feed us, I guess.
Okay, so we'll jump forward a little bit.
Okay.
We'll kind of wrap it up on my final question here. When you look into the future, the next 20 years or so, so what do you want for yourself and for your family?
Oh, man. That's a tough question because as I told you, I'm not so much a big picture person.
Right.
So for me, I have a hard time looking that far into the future. Man, all I really see that matters to me is my boys. I just see myself supporting them in whatever they're doing in 20 years. So Jack's gonna be 23. Finn's gonna be almost 21. So what will I be doing in 20 years? Hopefully celebrating Finn's 21 run. I really, all I can imagine when you say that is that I hope I'm going and spending as much time as possible with my boys who are hopefully out experiencing life for themselves, whether that be in college or living in a foreign country or working in a trade. I don't care what it is, as long as they're happy and feeling successful, I'll want to be supporting whatever that is. On a smaller level, what do I personally want? I want to build a house on the property here in Leban and raise my children the exact same way almost as my parents raised me.
Right.
I want them outside, hanging out with their cousins, swimming in the creek, literally running around, riding their bikes, getting what most kids don't get these days, and not getting sucked into technology and video games and cell phones. I want them to be outside, experiencing hard work, and spending time with my husband and myself. Like, that's what I see. I want to build a house. I want to spend so much time with my family. I would love to travel. I haven't been able to much since COVID and having 2 little kids. I want my kids to learn about other cultures. I tell my students all the time, experiencing other cultures is one of the most irreplaceable things you could give yourself. Like, I just tell my students, and I don't think they believe me sometimes, you don't know how other people live, and you can't possibly understand people and how they feel and how they act and what they think unless you've gone and lived it with them. You can't. And it's one of those things that will forever be a shame that I haven't experienced every culture.
Yeah.
Like, if only we could. But I want to do that. I want to give that to my kids. That was one thing. Sorry, mom and dad. I didn't get that much growing up. We used to go vacation in Mexico, and that was awesome, on a resort. I really want my kids to see how other people live, because I think that's how you become a well-rounded person. And being an American, especially, and being from a small town American, if you really want to understand our country and things that are good about it and things that aren't good about it, you have to go see it from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
You have to go look at other cultures and listen to them, like you said, hear what they think about us and why. Because when you stay in one place your whole life, you just never have a different perspective. How could you really, So for me, step one was going to college and the other side of the state. And then big step two was moving to Spain.
Right.
But I just want to encourage my kids and my students and everybody, spend as much time as you can in other areas of the world. And that can be Eastern Washington. Sure. That can be Alabama. It
Yeah.
can be New York. It can be Wisconsin. It can be Spain. It can be Equatorial Guinea. It can be Russia. I don't care. You go wherever intrigues you, but go other places. That's what I want to do with my kids.
Right. That's awesome.
So I'm going to be thinking for the rest of the day about why I don't have a better 20-year plan, but that's all I've got for you.
Well, Chelsea, I had a blast.
As did I.
It was a great
I'm
conversation.
long-winded, so if anyone's stuck through this, wow, good for you. But thank you for interviewing me. It was my first experience too, so maybe we can do a follow-up sometime in the future.
20 years? No, I'm kidding.
20 years from now, I'm going to tell you if I built a house, I guess,
Okay.
and traveled with my kids. Hey,
All
Jack,
right.
you want to say goodbye? Say see you later.
See you later.
All right, that was Jack, 3 years old.